for those of you who may not be aware, we're a health improvement service at OUH. We support patients, staff and visitors on a one-to-one basis, providing support to help them with their health and well-being. And we tend to deal with lifestyle issues around healthy eating, physical activity, reducing alcohol, stopping smoking, and self-care for general well-being. We can also link you to community services, refer you there, and we carry out mini health checks as well when we are on site. For the most up-to-date information about our location, it's probably best to check the intranet or our webpage, because currently we're actually not at the JR due to trauma being in blue outpatients, but from September we'll be back on site. However, in the meantime, we do continue to do telephone consultations, so we can still be accessed, and our details are there. In terms of how to refer, we'll go through this very quickly. There are 3 different ways. You can either go via requests and prescribing, just type in the search box refer to health and well-being, and you'll be able to refer to us, or you can send an email or telephone. Requests and prescribing is probably the best way to refer patients if you want to refer a patient, but for yourself, you can call or telephone. Okay, Nat, do you want to go on to what we're going to cover?
Yeah. Okay. So, as I previously mentioned, today we'll be exploring facts and myths on various foods and drinks and sharing practical tips on how to have a healthy and balanced diet. We will start with looking at the Eat Well guide, and then some popular myths around sugar, chocolate, salt and fats, and other things, as you can see on the screen. So we have lots of content to get through today, so please feel free to write any comments in the chat box, and we'll try to address them as we go through the webinar today. I'll hand over to Natasha, who will start telling us a little bit more about the Eat Well guide.
Okay, so this is my favourite one here. Spot the difference. So here we've got 2 different versions of the Eat Well guide. The version on the left is the most up-to-date, and the version on the right is the previous one. But to test your knowledge, I wondered if you could spot the difference between the 2 versions and write your answers in the chat box. I'll give you a minute to do that. So what differences can you see between the current or the most up-to-date Eat Well guide and the old one? Now, I can't see the chat box, can you?
Yes.
Okay, you might need to tell me what's coming up because I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Reduce
I can see them.
Products. You can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep. Purpose section seems to be an addition. Reduced dairy products. Yep. Oops. Let me go back. Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything else? Addition of the water glass. Yep. 20 more seconds. Beans and pulses. Larger proportion in the yellow section. Yeah. So people are seeing a lot of things. Okay, so let's quickly, yep, I can see more veg and fruit still coming through. Yep, foods outside the plate. Yep, perfect, great. Okay, so let's quickly actually run through what those differences are. So the Eat Well guide, oh, they're still coming through. Food labeling guide, that's right. In 2016, the Eat Well guide replaced the Eat Well plate, which had been in use since 2007. The new version of the guide is based on the most up-to-date scientific research, and obviously that's always changing. Like the old Eat Well plate, the new Eat Well guide shows the different types of food we should eat and in what proportions in order to have a healthy, balanced diet. However, there are some important differences. Firstly, the name. The fact it's now a guide reflects that it's a guide to a healthy diet. Removing the word plate, as well as removing the knife and fork that were on them, makes it clearer that the guidelines are based on overall diet rather than something to achieve at each meal. Yep, there you go. Then the second thing, and I think you guys noticed that already, is that the foods that are high in fat and sugar have been removed from the main image. Most of us need to cut down on the amount of fat and sugars that we eat, such as chocolate and sugar sweetened drinks, butter and crisps. So whereas these foods used to be in the purple section in the old one, now it's outside of the main plate, and that's been done, one, to reduce confusion, because beforehand people thought that because it was within the plate it was something that they needed to have as part of their health, but it also emphasizes the message that they're not a necessary part of a healthy diet and should only be eaten or consumed in small amounts. Okay, so somebody definitely mentioned the purple section. It only contains oils and spreads, and it's much smaller. Before, there were a range of fatty foods in this section, but the new guide takes a clearer view on the difference between saturated and unsaturated fat. We do need some fat in our diet for a healthy, balanced diet, but most of us, we eat too much saturated fat. So the small size of this purple section reflects the fact that oils and fats and spreads are still high in fat and contain a lot of calories, so they should be consumed in small amounts. Fruit juice, I clicked twice there, sorry about that, has been removed from the fruit and vegetable section, but I'll leave Natnari to talk to you a bit more about that in her section there. I've also circled the bit that it's less about meat. The pink section used to be called meat, fish, eggs, beans, and other non-dairy sources of protein. Now it's called beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins. And that's to encourage us to eat more beans and pulses and less red and processed meat. It also includes fish, where we should be eating one oily fish and one white fish per week. Okay, hopefully I'm not going too fast. We've got a lot to cover. So we're supposed to eat more fruit and veg and starchy vegetables. These sections are bigger, whereas the plate's now increased to 39%. For the start, well, what's that for the fruit and veg, and the starchy veg has increased to 37%. And did I say starchy veg? Starchy carbohydrate, sorry. And previously they were just 33%. So those two have increased. And I noticed somebody did say that earlier. This is mainly to help us increase the amount of fiber that we eat a day, because we should be eating 30 grams of fiber. Most of us don't get that. On average, we only consume about 90 grams of fiber in the UK, which is less than 2/3 of the recommendation. The advice is to base our meals around these foods and whole grain varieties as much as possible, so that we can meet that 30 grams. A lot of people say, what does 30 grams of fiber look like? And I think this is quite helpful to think about. It's 5 portions of fruit and veg, plus 2 whole wheat breakfast biscuits like Weetabix, and 2 thick slices of wholemeal bread, as well as a large baked potato with the skin on. So that's just to give you a rough idea of what 30 grams of fiber could look like in a day. Okay, so this is circling the dairy section there. On this plate, there's less dairy, and dairy, it's been halved in size from 15% to 8%, and the emphasis is on choosing low fat and low sugar options. By following this model, where it's a smaller amount, we can still get the amount of calcium that we are required to get in a healthy diet. Somebody pointed out the fact that there's now water on and how much we should drink. There's advice about that. Natnari is going to talk more about that, so I won't say too much more about that. And there's also at the bottom some guidance around, I can't see it because it's small on my screen, calories, but again, that's just another difference. So hopefully you understand and got all of that. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat box as we go through. We'll try and address them, but we have got a lot to go through. So I'm going to move on to Natnari, who's going to talk about this myth.
Yeah. Thank you, Natasha. Let's just take control. Okay, so as Natasha's mentioned, we'll now move on to myth about 5 a day. Okay, so one popular myth for 5 a day is eating 5 a day will make me put on weight. So what do you think? And do you think that's true, or do you think that's false? Please feel free to type it in the chat box as well. We'll just spend a few seconds here and then I'll move on if there's no comments. Yeah. Okay, a myth, yeah. Okay, so the answer to this is it's not true, because fruit and vegetables can help us to feel fuller for longer due to the high fiber content and water content. So this means that you're less likely to snack on foods that are high in sugar, salt, and fats. Also, fruit and vegetables can help to manage our weight as they are low in calorie. Okay. The next myth for 5 a day is fresh is better than frozen and tin. What do you think? Thank you for sharing. Myth, yeah. Yeah, so that's a myth. That's right. Fresh, frozen, or tin, fruit and vegetables all count towards your 5 a day. Vegetables are often frozen within hours of being picked, so may contain more nutrients than fresh ones, as well as that tin fruits and vegetables are often canned quickly, again, preserving the nutrients. However, when you're buying tin fruit and vegetables, be careful to check the food label. So choose fruits that is in natural juice, not syrup, as syrup contain added sugar. And also when buying vegetable in cans, buy vegetables in water and not in brine, because brine can be high in salt. We'll now just move on to talk about tips on how to include 5 a day. Okay. So according to the Eat Well guide, the recommendation say that we should aim to include at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day. 5 portions is a minimum. The more we can have, the better for our health. It is also important to include a variety of fruit and vegetables to ensure that we get a range of nutrients that we need. Okay, so there are different ways that we can include more fruit and vegetables into our diet. So for example, including them as snacks, including them with meals, and include a variety of them. Okay, and try to include seasonal fruit and vegetables and explore different cooking methods there, as some people may like different taste and different texture of different vegetables and fruits. And also another thing to consider is to think about accessibility. So if something is easy, we're more likely to do it. So it could be useful to have like a fruit bowl of fruit and vegetables, things that you can grab on the go, or prepare fruit and vegetables in advance and keeping them in the fridge and taking them with you to work. That could be, these are just some ideas to help you include more 5 a day in your diet.
Okay, so we're going to move on to sugar. So natural sugars, like honey, are healthier than sugar. Let me just take control. So what are your thoughts about that? Natural sugars, natural sweeteners, sorry, like honey, are healthier than sugar. But true.
If you press again for the myth to come up, there.
Yep. It's all sugar, true. Okay, so mixed actually. So some people saying it's all sugar, some people saying it's true that natural sweeteners like honey are healthier than sugar. Yeah, okay, so I think this is a really interesting one. So natural sugars are like honey and syrups such as agave syrup, rice syrup, molasses are often believed to be healthier than white sugar. However, in fact, like somebody said, honey, syrups, anything that ends in O's, and cane sugar, including unrefined cane sugar, are still sugar. Okay, somebody's saying the natural sweeteners include minerals and vitamins. Yes, so I'll get onto that. Yeah, they will all provide around the same amount of energy. Honey and sugar are both carbohydrates comprised primarily of glucose and fructose. Honey does contain trace amounts of vitamins and minerals, which may provide some health benefits, as somebody said in the chat box. Honey may also kill off germs because of its antimicrobial properties, and it may also ease coughing and sore throat. So in that way, you could say it's good. However, any additional nutrients that come with the less refined sugars will only provide a minimal contribution to the diet. So it's not necessarily a good idea to eat more of that, the more honey, because of the nutrients that come with it. Because either way, a diet high in sugar is still associated with high energy intake, which over time can lead to weight gain and obesity. Some people might say, I don't put sugar on my porridge, I put honey on my porridge. It's still going to be sugar the way it breaks down in our bodies. At around 22 calories per teaspoon, honey is high in calories. A teaspoon of sugar, by comparison, contains about 16 calories. However, it is worth noting that as honey is actually sweeter, you may need to not add as much, and you may use less in order to get the same taste. But I think it's an interesting one there. So hopefully that's interesting, something for you to consider. In terms of how much added sugars we should be having, some of you may know this already. So added sugars such as table honey and syrups that we've talked about shouldn't make up more than 5% of the energy that we get from our food and drink a day. And that's about 30 grams, which is 7 sugar cubes, those white or brown sugar tubes that you get, cubes a day, for anyone aged over 11. If you are looking at ways to reduce your sugar intake, you could consider some of the following tips. So, for example, you may want to use fresh fruit, such as berries or banana sliced on your porridge instead of sugar or honey. With toast, you may use less when you're spreading your jam and your marmalade. So you can still have the same jam and marmalade, but just have less of it. Or some people may go for the reduced sugar options. Then if you take sugar or tea in your coffee, some people find it helpful to gradually reduce the amount they use over time until they stop completely, or they may swap to sweeteners instead. Okay. So moving on to chocolate. There are several myths about the benefits of chocolate. And again, in the interest of time, I will quickly go through them. So they're all going to come up here. So the first myth, chocolate is good for me. Does anybody want to quickly write what they feel about that? Yes or no? You don't have to, but chocolate is good for you. Cocoa beans, the main ingredients in chocolate, contain naturally occurring, false, polyphenols. It depends, okay, yep, liking the responses. There's some evidence that this helps to reduce blood pressure, and they have antioxidant properties. However, chocolate is still high in sugar and saturated fat. It is a high-calorie food, and too much can result in excess weight, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Healthy options or sources, if we're looking, 70% more, okay, if we're looking for polyphenols, include things like beans, pulses, fruits, and vegetables. So whether or not it's good for you, yeah, like we said, depends perhaps on the cocoa bean content. Then we've got dark chocolate, it's better for me. So dark chocolate contains more cocoa solids and cocoa butter than milk chocolate, and sometimes, only sometimes, has less sugar. But the amount of polyphenols depends on how the chocolate is processed, so it's not necessarily better. Chocolate is good for producing hormones of happiness, yes. So during the manufacturing process of chocolate, things like fermentation, roasting time, temperature, that can all destroy or remove some of the polyphenols, which make dark chocolate good for us. However, we do know that some studies show that it promotes feeling more satisfied, and it lowers the desire to eat something sweet, and may actually suppress the amount of energy you take in than if you were to eat milk chocolate. So again, it kind of depends on where you sit with that. Chocolate gives you more energy. Chocolate does contain small amounts of caffeine, which may contribute to the idea that it makes us energetic. However, when you're hungry, it's probably better to have a snack that provides more sustained energy release than chocolate, if that's your reason for having chocolate. We can choose foods that are lower in fat and sugar. Could be a sandwich or a piece of toast or fruit or unsweetened cereal or something like that. We've got a chocolate bar as a perfect portion. Obviously, it depends on the size of the chocolate bar, but but any excess energy we consume is going to lead to weight gain. So one chocolate bar on average has about 250 calories. In order to lose that for the average person, a 50-year-old person would need to walk for 45 to 55 minutes to work off, just to give you some kind of comparison, 250 calories. Hot chocolate doesn't count, so the drink. The cocoa powder used to make hot chocolate contains less fat because it doesn't have the cocoa butter and other fats found in a chocolate bar. However, depending on what you mix it with, your hot chocolate drink can actually have more calories than the chocolate bar. in terms of the fat and the sugar. So if we're buying it, we still need to be careful of the full fat milk or the extra cream, marshmallows, cocoa, chocolate sprinkles that are put on top. Okay, then the last one we've got here is that chocolate with bubbles in it is lighter. The energy for fat sugar content per 100 grams is actually similar to other chocolates. The added air makes it less dense than solid chocolates. I'm thinking here like Aero chocolate bars. Some people might buy those. So eating chocolate with bubbles can be like eating a slightly smaller bar. So it does have a little less saturated fat and sugar, but always check the portion size because you may end up having a bigger one. So the bubbly chocolates are sold in larger bars. You can actually end up eating more and it eliminates those health benefits. Okay, so tips around that. Just if you're looking to make any swaps, you could try swapping for healthier equivalent. So if we said a 50-gram chocolate bar contains 250 calories, this just gives an example for comparison that 3 dried apricots is 194 calories, plain popcorn is 131, fruit yogurt is 176. So these are also other alternatives. And we've got fresh bowls of berries and also try swapping a hot chocolate for a skinny latte if we're looking to try and have alternative snacks to chocolate. Okay, Nat, I'll hand over to you for salt.
Yeah, thank you. Just take my control back. Okay, so now we'll move on to talk about salt. One myth that people often think when it comes to salt is that if their blood pressure is within the normal range, they don't need to worry about how much salt they eat. What do you think about that? If someone has a normal high blood pressure, do they need to be mindful about how much salt they put on to their food or add to their food? Okay. So I'll just reveal. So even if you don't have high blood pressure, eating less salt can help to slow down the rise in blood pressure that occurs with age. So eating too much salt can increase your blood pressure, and having high blood pressure can increase like risk of heart disease and other long-term condition as well. Okay. Another myth about salt is that sea salt or kosher salt or pink Himalayan salt is healthier than table salt. What do you think? Okay. It's also, yeah, that's right. So the answer to that, sea salt, kosher salt, and pink Himalayan salt have gained a lot of interest in the press during the past years, and they are often promoted as being better and healthier than table salt. However, because they are less processed than table salt, therefore they may retain higher traces of natural minerals such as magnesium, potassium, calcium, and other nutrients compared to table salt. However, these traces of minerals can be found in other food that are healthier and contain less sodium and salt. So it would be a good idea to not add too much salt. Okay. So according to the Eat Well guide, adults should eat less than 6 grams of salt each day. That's about 1 teaspoon. This includes salt that is contained within ready meals and ready-made food as well, such as bread, and as well as salt that you add during cooking or at the table. Here are some ideas to help you reduce your salt intake. Okay, so you can swap to low salt option. You can add herbs, spices during cooking for extra flavor, and cut back on processed foods such as processed meat, smoked food, cheese, for example, and read the food labels. So here shows the food label of the range of what's considered as low, medium, and high salt content in food. Okay, so it would be a good idea to think about how you might go about reducing salt So also, when you start to cut down on your salt intake, it's important to allow time for your body to get used to adapting to the new taste, as your taste bud will change over time. Okay, we'll now move on to look at fats. You're on
Sorry,
mute.
I was still muted. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take control. Okay, fat. So I think there can always be a debate or discussion about this one. In terms of fats, coconut oil is good for you. Let me see what people think about that. Do you agree? Coconut oil is good for you. False. False. We've had a couple of responses saying false. Okay, yeah. So I think there's some people who good depending on the quantity. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting response. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people will talk about a lot of the health benefits that are associated with coconut oil. However, I think from a healthy eating perspective, coconut oil is about 86% saturated fat. This is about 1/3 more saturated fat than butter, for example, which is 52%. We know that diets high in saturated fat are associated with increased bad cholesterol in the blood, and high cholesterol is a risk factor for coronary heart disease and stroke. Somebody saying they prefer olive oil, yeah. There has been some speculation that some of the saturated fat present in coconut oil may be better for us than other saturated fats. But so far, there's not enough good quality research to provide us with a definitive answer. And British Heart Foundation has been the source for a lot of this information, but I checked other sources as well, and that seems to be the consistent theme, that you will find some studies where they do talk about the benefits, but the research, the evidence isn't consistent at the moment. What we do know is that replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats, like vegetable oil and sunflower oil, have been shown as an effective way to help reduce bad cholesterol levels. So this would be a healthier choice. But yeah, even with olive oil, anything that's saturated fat, we do need to consider the amount that we consume. So it depends on the quantity, like somebody said, for all of them. If we are looking at some tips around that, if you like the taste of coconut oil, as with butter, it's okay to use it every now and again. However, just restrict ourselves to small amounts and use perhaps unsaturated as our everyday choice instead. I've got here, we can try polyunsaturated spreads. And I think previously there was an issue about spreads. However, the new manufacturing process has solved concerns about trans fat. In the UK, you're not allowed to have those trans fat content anymore. Liquid oils can also be used for cooking and baking instead of butter. I made a nice vegan cake at the weekend with sunflower oil, thanks to Natnary, than butter, and it was very moist. But yeah, you can use liquid oils for baking. Okay, Nat, do you want to move on to fluid intake?
Okay, so now we'll move on to fluid intake. So one myth for fluid intake is drinking juices and smoothie is a great way to increase fruit and vegetables intake as well as fluid intake. What do you think to that? Okay, we've got true. High in sugar, yeah. Okay, so all fruit, juice and smoothies contain a natural sugar called fructose. Fructose from whole fruit doesn't add to your intake of free sugar, but in fruit juice and smoothies, it does. Juice and smoothies count as 1 portion of your 5 a day. However, the recommendation of juice and smoothie is 150 ml per day, so it's a very small amount. This is because when they are made, like juice and smoothie, have most of their fibers removed. It is better to eat whole fruits and vegetables as they contain fiber. As previously mentioned, fiber can help us feel fuller for longer and help to slow down the rate at which fructose is absorbed into the bloodstream. So drinking too much juices and smoothies can result in you taking extra calories and free sugar, which can impact on your weight, oral health, as well as overall health. Okay, another myth here is tea and coffee don't count towards the daily fluid intake. Okay, does anyone agree or disagree with that? Disagree? Disagree? Okay. So according to the Eat Well guide, it recommends that we drink 6 to 8 glasses of fluid per day, water, low-fat milk, and sugar-free drinks, so including tea and coffee and small amount of fruit juices and smoothie does count towards fluid recommendation. That's true. Caffeine can cause dehydration. Yeah, so caffeine is a stimulant, and too much caffeine can impact on our sleep quality, which again can impact on our energy level. So therefore, it would be helpful to be mindful of how much caffeine you take. Okay. Okay. So here are some tips on how to include fluid. So it's essential that we drink enough fluid to help our body to function properly. Being hydrated can help us to improve sleep quality, cognition, and mood. So here are some tips to help us to stay hydrated. So water is healthy as it has no calories and contain no sugar that can damage our teeth. So tips on how to include fluid could be using a reusable water bottle and keeping it close by, so you are often reminded to drink water throughout the day, and drink water-based drinks with every meal, and try calorie-free flavored water to add some variety, or you can add your own shop fruit and vegetables to add flavor to water. Some people find it useful to add reminders to help them to drink water throughout the day. And if you like smoothies or fruit juice, then perhaps adding more vegetables to that can help to reduce the free sugar content as well. Okay, so I'll move on to talk about plant-based diet. So plant-based lifestyle has gained a lot of mainstream interest over the past years, and many people are adopting this lifestyle choice. So a common myth about plant-based diet is that plant-based diet are very restrictive. What do you think? What do you think about plant-based diet in general, and do you think that it's restrictive? I'll just wait a few moments before I move on. False, yeah. Okay, yeah, so plant-based diet is based on food derived from plants, including vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and fruits, with few or no animal products. So therefore, plant-based diet can be very diverse. Okay, popular plant-based diets include a vegetarian diet, so that's which includes no meat, a vegan diet, which is a type of vegetarian diet that exclude not just meat, but animal-based products such as milk, egg, and honey as well. And another type of plant-based diet is pescatarian diet, which is largely a vegetarian, but also includes seafood. Okay. So another myth about plant-based diet is that plant-based diets are always healthy. Is that true? What do you think? False? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Okay, so not all plant-based foods are healthy, as some plant-based food are processed. As we know, processed food can be high in sugar, salt, and fat. And as we've talked about it earlier, too much of added sugar, salt, and fats can be harmful to our health. Therefore, it's important to include food from all food groups to ensure that we get all the essential nutrients that we need from our meals. Okay, a well-balanced plant-based diet that are low in saturated fats can help to manage weight. as well as that it can reduce risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, heart disease, and some cancers as well. Okay. Just before we move on to talking about tips on how to adopt plant-based diet, I just want to share that Public Health England has produced the vegetarian and vegan Eat Well guide to support vegetarians and vegans in adopting a healthy and balanced diet. So here is the vegetarian Eat Well guide. It's very similar to the general Eat Well guide, but meat has been replaced with plant-based proteins such as beans and pulses and legumes. So the vegetarian diet guide can be applied to anyone over the age of 2 years old. And this is the vegan Eat Well guide. So it encourages people to make the most of plant-based nutrition, such as including whole grains, nuts, fruits and vegetables and legumes. So at a glance, the Eat Well guide provides a rough idea of how to have a balanced diet, and also makes use of fortified foods and supplementations. There are actually 2 pages to the vegan Eat Well guide. So if you're interested, the guide is available on the Vegan Society website. Okay. So we'll just move on to look at tips of how to include more vegetables and fruit into our diet. So it would be good to start off with something small and easy. So start with picking a few small changes to implement each week. For example, swapping butter to like plant-based bread, or swap cows or goat's milk to plant-based milk. So there's a whole range that's available right now. And plant-based meal swap. So swap 1 or 2 animal-based ingredients in your meal. So like Natasha said earlier, swapping butter that you often use in cake to like sunflower oil or plant-based oil. Okay. And also to plan ahead, plan your meals and snack in advance by using recipes that are available online. So there's so many recipes, plant-based cookbooks as well, and online recipes that you can try to help you eat more plants. Okay. So now Natasha will move on to talk about food labels.
Trying to unmute, sorry about that. Yes, thanks, Nat. Conscious of time, so I already speak fast, so I'll try not to speak too fast. But yes, food labels. So in 2013, the government recommended a front of pack food labeling system to all food retailers and manufacturers. And since then, we've seen that labels have gradually been rolled out more and more on products. Most products have nutritional information on the label, and some products also have the traffic light system, the color coding, so that at a glance you can tell whether a food is high, as in red, medium, amber, or low green in the amounts of fat, saturated fat, sugars, and salt. The more greens on the label, then the idea is that the healthier the choice. Sorry, I haven't taken control. Okay, I'm taking control of that. Yeah, I'm doing it now. So the thing for you to consider then is that my portion size is the same as a serving size. So when you serve up your food on the table or on your plate, your portion size is at the same as a serving size. So I'll just carry on. A portion size on a pack is a manufacturer's recommendation for one portion of the product. What the manufacturer thinks is a portion size might be smaller than what you put on your plate, which means that even if the product looks healthy, if you have more than the amount that's recommended, you may end up consuming more calories, more saturated fat or salt than you actually realize. So a lot of time, even though it's amber, you're like, yeah, you buy a meal for 2. If you have the whole meal, then actually that amber for saturated fat is most definitely a red, because it was recommended to be half that portion. I think the one also nuts, when you're at the checkout and you see these little containers of nuts, which are tiny, if you look at them, actually they'll say that it's meant to be 2 portion sizes, whereas normally, or serving size, whereas normally we think it's just 1. So that would change the saturated fat and salt content of that. The second thing to consider is low fat is always good for me. What do people want to say about that in the chat box? Do they agree or disagree? Low fat is always good for me. Any comments?
Yeah,
Disagree, disagree. Yeah, so low-fat versions of foods aren't always, as somebody said, true, aren't always the healthiest options. Sometimes the manufacturers actually replace fat with sugar, which isn't a healthier choice. So it's always important to read the nutrition information to compare the sugar and fat content on the original and the reduced fat product. So some tips to consider. Reduced and low fat are not the same thing. So when you're doing your shopping, low fat means that a product has 3 grams or less fat per 100 grams, whilst reduced fat means a product is 25% lower in fat than the standard product. So for example, I think of something like mayonnaise. So often these foods are very high in fat to begin with. So as well as mayonnaise, you've got crisps and cheese. So we still need to limit the amount that we eat, as a reduced fat version is still likely to be high in fat. I hope that was clear. Also, as we've said, beware of reduced fat claims. Reduced or low fat versions aren't always the healthiest. Sometimes because of the sugar that's in them, they actually end up being not so great for us. So something to consider. And it's also really important, I know we talked about sugar earlier, but it was relevant now as well because we're talking about labels, that sugar is not always listed in the ingredients as sugar. So quite often when we look at the back, it's not easy to see what sugar is actually on the list. And I don't know if you can see this clearly, but sugar can come under lots of different names. So I think there are about 50 names there on this infographic from the British Heart Foundation, but some of the terms are sucrose, glucose, fructose, maltose, honey, palm sugar, hydrolyzed starch, syrup, and invert sugar. Those are all still sugars, so we need to look for those. The one thing to remember that can be helpful in terms of helping you to make an informed decision when shopping is that the higher up on the ingredients list that sugar is, the more added sugar there is in the product. So the higher, it means there's still quite a lot of sugar. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of this webinar. I'll hand over to Nat Nuri, who will take us through some reflection tools. And obviously, if we've got time for question and answer, we can do that as well.
Okay, so thank you, Natasha. So yes, so thank you for joining us today. And we hope that this talk has given you something to think about. But just before we say goodbye, here is a quick reflection tool that can help you to think about how you can go about making changes to your lifestyle. So using the traffic light system, red is what will you stop doing, amber is what will you continue doing, green is what will you start doing. So from our talk today, is there anything that you wanted to focus on, things that you would like to change or do differently in your lifestyle? So this could be quite useful to help you think about that. So do please feel free to type in the chat box, or you can have a think in your own time. Okay, so someone put check the label carefully. Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Aware of the time, we've taken extra time today, so thank you for staying with us till the end. And if you would like some support from the Here for Health team, then please do feel free to get in touch via telephone, email, or or if you have patients that you would like to refer to our team, then you can refer via EPR or email or telephone. We'll stay behind just a little bit longer. If you've got any questions or anything you want to speak to us, we're happy to answer them. I'll now stop recording. Okay.